afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. There we go. Thank you so much for joining us for a really fantastic session right here before lunch. Because I think if we're talking about Saudi Arabia's unprecedented rise in the cultural space, on the global stage, it's often the giga projects that are making some of the loudest noise on the global stage and have done really transformative work, not only for Saudi Arabia, but in terms of how these projects are realized globally. Because oftentimes, projects are built and culture is an afterthought. And what I think is really special about these projects here is that culture is really first and foremost. And so I have really two esteemed guests joining me here, Michael Dايك, the CEO of Neiom, and Ryan Faiz, the Deputy CEO of Niyam. So please join me in welcoming my guests. So I wanted to start there on that point, in how the cultural aspects of how these giga projects was not an afterthought, was something that was from the earliest stages of planning and development, and also how that has learned, how you've learned from, that massive build and made sure to tweak and change things as things are developing. So, Ryan, if you could start, how did Niyam originally?
Sure. Thank you very much, and pleasure to be here among this esteemed panelists, which we share the stage quite often lately. As you know, Niyom is not a simple real estate development project. Today, Niyom is developed around an ecosystem development. So economic development is very important, although you see a lot of real estate and infrastructure being built, but economic development is at the core of what makes Niyom successful. And out of economic development, we've identified 15 sectors to be the economic engines of Niyom, and culture and heritage is one of them. So going back to your question around it not being an afterthought, ensuring that it is driving decisions, ensuring that it's at the core and at the center of ecosystem development within Niyom in particular. And I can't speak on behalf of the other projects, but I can almost assure you that it is the same in many of the other projects as we can see ourselves. So culture is at the center of building an ecosystem, and that's the only way we're going to be able to attract talent. That's the only way we can attract capital. That's the only way we can attract businesses to come, and livability. It's at the center of what the offering is there to develop. So although we see and hear a lot about the real estate and the big steel structures that are being built, culture and heritage and entertainment is at the center of what Niyom is there to deliver, and is at the center of the ecosystem development that we have at Niyom.
Absolutely. And a lot of that is about, just the breadth of what culture has to offer. That there's film projects, there's heritage projects, there's really so much that I think Niyam has done a really tremendous job in spearheading and continuing to grow. And now we're seeing, films debuting at film festivals on the international stage, where Niyam is a heart and center to that, and Saudi culture is a heart and center to that. So I think it's really been amazing. So how have you gone about making sure that those are the right projects for you?
I also think, which is a very important point to raise, I also think we're able to activate these sectors before the full development of Niyom is complete. You mentioned the film and media industry. We have significant investments made on the ground as we speak in the media industry, where we've hosted many large-scale movie productions in Niyom. We also have a lot of the intangible soft aspects of culture that we're able to activate early on. We have a very successful program, Artist in Residence program. It's a 3-month program where we've hosted 8 artists, 4 Saudi, 4 international, to come and develop inspiration out of what they see in Niyom. We're fortunate with, beautiful landscapes, natural beauty that even before the development is complete can offer a lot of inspiration to artists who come to Niyom. We also have actually an annual program called the Cultural Leadership Program. It's an investment we've made where we offer a 12-month mentorship and leadership with leading academic institutions on culture. This is not only for NEOM employees. Actually, we've hosted many employees from other organizations in the kingdom. So this just showcases the investments that has been made in NEOM, and I'm sure it's the same many in all the other projects, in the cultural aspects, even before the real estate development is up and complete.
Absolutely, and it's fascinating to me as well because, you know, if you look at the U.S., for example, they've really utilized it's the areas that were not developed that are now, I think, such a huge part of the cultural imagination because it was about what the imagination of what the America could be that still resonate now 100 years later. And I think NEOM is capable of doing that same for Saudi by, you know, yes, looking at that heritage, but also looking towards the future. Yeah. And Michael, for you, it's a bit different because NEOM is building something from the ground up, and you are building something in Riyadh, where there are already so many different multifaceted cultural spaces. We're in one right now, and you want to have something that's adding value to that, that's distinguishing that. So tell me about what was the thinking and the impetus behind what you wanted to bring to the project.
Thank you, William, and thank you for having me today. I think you know, we're in a very fortunate position at Numuraba. We occupy a prime piece of real estate in the northwest corner of Riyadh. The important thing to say is that Numuraba is not a city in its own right. It is essentially an opportunity to make an already great city even greater. And we take a lot of our oxygen from the past, which is the cultural connectivity. And it's really important to us in terms of that phrase. And we think about Murabba Palace and the fundamental geometry of that. And then what we do is we take that as license to then adapt and create the things that people are familiar with in Riyadh today in terms of the urban density, the typology, the Saumani architectural code and the like. But we give that a modern twist. So basically we're an intersection between the past, the present and the future. And if I just explain a little bit more about what I mean, we're introducing... Sorry, sir. You can speak. Thank you. Okay. We're introducing mid and high level architecture into Riyadh at a dense scale. So today, you know, Riyadh doesn't have a high urban density. It's 4,000 or 5,000 people per square kilometre. We're going to north of 20,000 per square kilometre. So Saudis who are very well travelled are familiar with living in those environments. And what we're doing at Numuraba is creating that, but actually in Riyadh today. So I think for us, we take, as I say, our oxygen from the past. We create this connectivity into the future. And then when we look at the future and the way that we position ourselves, we are taking 25% of the total land mass and devoting that to green space. But we're not just creating green space, we're actually connecting to the western side to Wadi Hanifa, and we're extending to the east to create our own linear parks, which actually builds on the culture and the heritage of the past in terms of the natural wadis. Above and beyond that, we have Maqab, which is the world's largest structure at the heart, that is the beating heart of the downtown, of the capital city. And around that, we have several anchors, including the World Cup Stadium, which is forged from the acacia tree. And that again speaks to the history and the heritage and the culture of Saudi Arabia, but also brings it into the future. And I think finally we have other anchors that wind their way around Maqab and around the entire estate, whether that be education, whether it be culture, or whether it be innovation and tech. But there is something for everyone in the new modern downtown.
Could you tell me more about those cultural spaces? Because obviously, yes, place building is such a huge part of this, but tell me more about some of the cultural initiatives that you have planned.
Yep, so we have plans for museums, but again, what we mustn't do is actually replicate museums that exist elsewhere in Riyadh. We have to think about museums, whether they're museums of the future, which actually speaks to the vernacular of Numuraba. But because of our position, you know, we are a back door to Diriyah. We are a front door to the future of Riyadh as it continues its march north. So the reality is we'll have museums. Equally, we will have innovative educational facilities and a university, which will actually talk to the future culture, where ultimately we're going to be creating roles and opportunities for Saudis to participate in tech-fueled roles of the future, which actually will become the ground bed for, you know, that culture today, but in Numuraba in the future. And there are many other elements too, as we traverse the estate.
Absolutely. And I wanted to speak a bit more about, you know, looking at this from an investment perspective. So much of investment comes not just because of, you know, numbers on a spreadsheet, but storytelling, you know, narrative building. There has to be something that you on a human level, feel you can connect with. So tell me about how each of you have built that storytelling and that narrative play in terms of attracting investors, strategic partners. Ryan, if I could start with you.
I think I talked a little bit about the programs that we've activated, but what I didn't talk about, and actually, is the exciting assets that we naturally sit on in Neom from a cultural standpoint. Actually, this is very timely. Last week, there was an announcement done by the Ministry of Culture around a discovery of a civilization called Masyun in Neom. It's one of the oldest known civilizations discovered in the Arabian Peninsula, going back to 10 to 11,000 years. We also have the Nabatean way that goes, from north to south and south to north, which connects obviously all the Nabatean civilization, and that also goes back to thousands of years. A lot of that, in addition to many other assets, as you can imagine, the civilizations that lived in that part of the world existed for thousands of years. So we're able to leverage existing assets, not necessarily something that needs to be built, in order to develop the storytelling that you mentioned around the relevance and significance of that part of the world at some point in time. And in every tourism and investment destination, you will find the necessity of having cultural assets. You will find the necessity of having not only the development assets, but the story of the place. And we're fortunate enough to have that in Neom in a massive way, with that region being really a very lively and active region thousands of years ago, and now we're actually reliving it now and building the city of the future based on a significant heritage and culture of the past.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember growing up, and this is a true story, my father used to tell me, that there were so many untapped, cultural resources within Saudi Arabia. There were ancient civilizations, these sorts of areas that no one has seen, no one can go there. He would dream that one day we could go together, and it's amazing that they're now being discovered and developed, because it was something that literally I dreamed of as a kid. So it's fantastic to see that. And as well, because there is so much discovery in what you're doing, you're able to pivot constantly what that narrative is, because you're incorporating new discoveries. Yeah. So it's fantastic to see. What would you say is the main narrative thrust that you've been building with New Moraba?
So the narrative we've been building is essentially to say we are part of Riyadh today, and actually we will be part of Riyadh tomorrow, and we will develop the future form of Riyadh. If we think about what lies at the heart of New Moraba, and we know Muqab, it's a structure and a place like no other. But to your point, a building is just a building unless it has a story, and it needs a narrative. So the way that we are positioning Muqab is another world. Essentially, when people enter another world, they enter from underneath and they leave the world they know, and they enter into another world. So Muqab of in itself is a tech-fueled experience, which actually is probably the largest scale imaginable of where the physical and the digital converges. So what I mean by that is essentially you can bring the culture of Riyadh today, but you can take it into Muqab, and you can actually live in a very different way when you're inside Muqab. And we have the potential to, through technology, to enable people to feel like they're living in another world. And with that being the case, that means that 100 million visitations a year will come to Muqab. We believe that will create followership, and it will create its own culture of the future, which will be basically enshrined upon Riyadh culture, Saudi culture, and also international culture. So it really will become a city and a place as a part of Riyadh that is all about the future, but it's anchored in its roots from the past.
Could you tell me more about those technologies? Because, yes, I think it is such a fascinating time for creating immersive cultural spaces, because that it allows you to, I think, engage people in a way that maybe a traditional museum never could. I think there was a study that at an average museum, people spent 17 seconds in front of every painting, whereas in an immersive space it can be totally different. So tell me a bit about that.
So, we have 19 technology layers inside Muqab. So bear in mind we have a dome, which is 360 meters in height and effectively 340 meters in diameter. So it's on a very large scale, and we're the only place in the world which has a skyscraper living inside another building, which essentially is the central tower. So you can put your finger around the outside edge and you can walk for 2.7 kilometers in the first 4 levels of the tier before you hit the midpoint. But you're completely in an immersive world. So the trick is that you can never see the dome, ultimately, because of the type of technology we have in the immersive displays. So if the human eye could see for a mile, it would be able to see and it wouldn't be able to discern the dome. That's the first thing. The second thing is we are investing in innovative technologies to develop real holograms, which of course is easy to say but hard to do, but because we have ambition driven by Vision 2030, that's what we're seeking to do. And ultimately, to bring those two things to life and to create content and narrative, we're using AI to basically inject content and creativity into another world. So technically, as we program what happens inside the dome, you can visit on one occasion and you can be on a search to Atlantis, and another occasion you can be on a search to Pandora or anything else in between. So it really is taking technology to another level. There are another 16 layers above and beyond that, but those are the three primary ones.
No, well, I'm fascinated to see how the gig projects are going to be developing. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation, but it's wonderful speaking with you. So for Ryan, Faiz, and Michael Dike, I'm William Mullally. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.